Crisis Intervention, presented by Kenya Rocha, LMHC, from Mosaic Family Counseling Center, Incorporated, with permissions from Roy Kiesling, LISW, in collaboration with Iowa Department of Human Rights. The purpose of this presentation is to help service providers to learn different crisis intervention techniques to help those that they work with when dealing with different challenges they encounter. A crisis is defined as a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger, a time when a difficult or important decision must be made. The turning point when change takes place, like that of recovery or death. These definitions indicate a crisis is a severe situation. When humans face situations such as this, there are many reactions that can happen. One that happens often is a time of uncertainty, the inability to see a situation clearly because emotions are high and fears or threats about life as they know it are present. People react intensely and often need help to calm down to be able to think and take the next steps. Stress response. The system involved here is the autonomic nervous system, which controls the involuntary body functions like breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure, constriction of blood vessels, and small airways in the lungs. The two components of this are the sympathetic nervous system, which acts like a gas pedal that responds to threats and gives the body a burst of energy, and the parasympathetic nervous system that acts like a brake and promotes a rest and digest response that calms the body down after the danger is past. The amygdala, which is the emotional processing center, sends distress signals to the hypothalamus, which is the command center, and that sends a signal to the sympathetic nervous system to shoot adrenaline to the body, which sends all the energy to the limbs so the person can fight or run. When the danger's over, the parasympathetic nervous system goes to work to calm us down. If stress isn't alleviated effectively, the parasympathetic nervous system isn't effective in putting the brakes on. Crisis intervention. When one is in crisis, the system has identified a threat, either physical or emotional, and the person becomes highly activated. The person's response may seem unresponsive or over-responsive. Something very bad has just happened and they're in an emotionally activated state. An under-responsive person might look like they're sort of spaced out, shut down, or detached. Perhaps they're confused or, at any rate, unable to respond in a way that makes sense. Over-responsive people may be crying uncontrollably, screaming, or look angry. Oftentimes, they're physically defensive. The need is the same, for them to come back to a more balanced way of feeling so they can manage the situation, problem solve, and not feel the threat that they currently do. Before we can address the actual issue, the client must be able to think properly and respond rather than react. To help balance one's emotional state so that their brains can respond rationally or objectively, we can use different tools. And these tools can help with all levels of crisis, from a bad breakup to an episode of abuse, an accident, or a recent death of someone close to them. Just letting the person know that you're here for them will help. Ask them their name, give them your name, create that connection. Tell them that you're here to help them, and ask them if there's something that they need. Even if they don't know what they need, the words help and need will bring their attention in so they can begin to calm down and see you as someone who's here to help. Ask them to walk with you. Even if they're not saying anything, that can help calm the body's nervous system. There are several methods used to help someone deal with an acute event. We will talk about two here. CID, or critical incident desensitization. It is used in the moment and is designed to help calm a person so they can think about it clearly. You can also use this at any stage of a crisis. CISD, or critical incident stress debriefing. It's used to help people talk about what happened to help them feel better. It's more of a cognitive approach. CISD, or critical incident stress debriefing, is meant to be done in a safe, non-judgmental space for survivors of traumatic events. It's usually done in a group, but it can also be done with individuals. Normally, a trained and certified person by the National Organization for Victim Assistance facilitates the meetings. It happens usually between 24 to 72 hours after the incident, and it's meant to reduce the overwhelm the incident might have caused and give a place for people to talk about it. It helps people understand their emotional reactions a little better, and it's not intended to replace mental health therapy. The first step is to assess the impact of the critical incident. Ask them what happened and how they were involved, how they feel they were impacted by it, and what they think the result will be. Just allowing people to say what happened and how it impacts them begins the processing of the emotions and the understanding they have about the event so that it doesn't cause prolonged negative effects. The second step is identifying any immediate issues surrounding the event, including safety and security of themselves or their family. Asking such questions as if they have a fear for their safety or security of their families following the event can help them problem solve. Their perception of safety can be affected immediately when the big event has been experienced. Step 3. Creating a safe place for expression of emotions and thoughts and fears surrounding the trauma. Letting them talk about it and providing that non-judgmental space will be very helpful for them. The next step is to predict future events and reactions in the aftermath of the incident. Help them know there may be other reactions or thoughts or feelings about the incident, and perhaps they will have a physical or other psychological symptoms. Tell them not to worry, that this is normal, and help them plan for future needs. Therapy referrals are good to give at this time. The next step here is to review how they're responding. Being intentional in identifying their reactions as emotional, mental, behavioral will help them to think about it differently. For instance, labeling their emotions and validating them at the same time. I see how sad that makes you. I would be sad too. Or for instance, if you're working with someone who can't make themselves go back to work because of fears of safety or low trust, saying something like, I see your thoughts are around safety for you and everyone else here. I can understand why you just want to stay home. This helps them to feel understood, and when we feel understood, our defenses come down and we're more able to think outside the box. It helps us to calm our systems, feel more connected, and able to move forward with what we need to do. The next step is closure. You want to help them have some closure over the event, like what to do next. Teaching them to ground when thoughts of the incident may come up can help them keep from having over-emotional responses that will keep them from being able to problem solve for themselves. Giving them information on community resources can help them move forward with helping themselves when or if needed. All of these things can help bring your services to a close. Debriefing helps in the process of getting back into the community or workplace if they were impacted in these areas. We help them to create a plan for re-entry. What are the things they might need? Who do they need to talk to? Anything else they might need? Other things to deal with? What is it that they need to do in order to move forward? Critical Incident Desensitization, or SID, developed by Roy Kiesling, LISW. SID is a process that helps the person who has just experienced a traumatic or critical event to reduce their emotional reactions. The SID helps to come into a more balanced state so they can see the problem more clearly and begin their problem-solving process. CID is not therapy, however. It does come from therapeutic theories such as Adaptive Information Processing System, or the AIP. The CID is meant to be used fairly soon after the incident, although it will work for anyone who has escalated emotionally. It simply draws attention to the disturbance the person is feeling and reduces the emotional and physiological responses. When a critical incident happens, it sort of locks out the thinking brain, not allowing it to work properly. We're stuck in a spiral of emotions that feel out of control. SID has been designed to reduce that reaction. The SID uses eye movements or tapping to reduce the focus on the incident and reduce the disturbance of the event. We use eye movements or tapping to mimic REM sleep. When we sleep and move into REM stage of sleep, we process the day's events. Something that may have been mildly upsetting or confusing or stressful during the day often feels better the next day because the brain's natural way of processing through the disturbances of the day happened during REM sleep. The first step is to hear it. Ask them, tell me what happened. Just being able to say what happened begins the process of calming down. Our system has an urge to connect with another person, especially when in crisis. Our parasympathetic nervous system can begin the rest and digest process if it gets the message that it is safe enough to do that and it's not alone. If the person has difficulty starting to tell the story, have them get up and move around with you, take a walk, take some deep breaths, or simply walk in place until they're feeling like they can begin to talk about it. Step 2 is measure it. After you have heard the story, measure its level of disturbance, 0 to 10. This helps begin to move the experience from mostly emotional to cognitive, so we can engage the problem-solving part of the brain. You'll ask them, how disturbing is it to you, 0 to 10, where 0 is no disturbance and 10 is the worst you can imagine. For some, clarifying the numbers 0 to 10 will work well. For others, just expressing how upset they feel at the moment would be all that's necessary. Sometimes it will be hard for them to find a number. You can ask them, how much does it bother you, a little or a lot? Step 3 is suggest it. Simply point out that rapid eye movements seem to lower the vividness of images and decrease levels of disturbance. For many, that will be enough. If they need additional clarification, just compare the eye movements to what we naturally do while sleeping, when we're in REM sleep. Most people are familiar with REM or rapid eye movement sleep. Step 4 is consent to it. After an explanation of the eye movements, a simple question like, are you willing to give this a try for a few minutes, will be all that is needed. SID usually creates some response within the first couple of sets of eye movements. Step 5 is explain it. You can say rapid eye movements seem to decrease how disturbing an incident feels. And to get started, I'm going to remind you about what we discussed about the incident and how much it disturbs you. 0 to 10, where 0 is no disturbance and 10 is the highest disturbance. After that, I'll begin the eye movements. When I stop, I'll ask you to rate from 0 to 10 how disturbing you think the incident is now, and then I'll repeat the eye movements. We'll continue repeating that process as long as the disturbance decreases. Once it has stopped decreasing, we'll talk about what to do next. Alternatively, if you or they don't feel comfortable with doing eye movements, you can do tapping. And just explain to them that tapping distracts our emotional mind and helps us to think better. If you or they prefer the tapping, you can show them how. You can walk them through it by crossing your arms across your chest so that you have one hand on each shoulder. Then begin to tap at a rhythm like this. The rhythm will be fairly fast and only about 6 to 8 round trips. One tap on each shoulder is a round trip. Step 6, stop it. Tell them to let you know if they want to stop. Tell them you will stop immediately and help in another way if this does not help. Some circumstances that they might want to stop would be if another incident comes up or their disturbance goes up. If they have a body sensation that's not related to the incident and scares them. They might say something like, this makes me think of XYZ past trauma. That would be an indicator that you would stop. If a past traumatic incident comes up while you're doing eye movements or tapping, this just means that the past trauma memories have been triggered by this event. Somehow in the person's mind, they're connected. Simply stop the eye movements and discuss what to do next. This is a good time to refer to a mental health trauma specialist to help them with their symptoms. Oftentimes, the disturbance does increase after the first set of eye movements or tapping. If that happens, do another set. This is just an indicator that the trauma is on the surface. However, although rare, at times the disturbance can continue to go up after the second set. This is just an indicator that they may have connected this incident in their brain to a past trauma, and it may increase the overwhelm. Although this normally does not happen, this is rare because the activity of providing eye movements or tapping distracts the system from the emotional overwhelm and helps to decrease the disturbance. But we must caution you about the possibilities. If after 2 sets the disturbance increases, stop. No more eye movements or tapping. Discuss with the person what to do next to handle the situation. Refer them to a mental health professional to address their past traumas. Another reason to stop the eye movements or tapping is if the person reports they're feeling something in their body that's connected to something else, not this event. An example of that might be if you're working with somebody after a car accident where they hurt their shoulder and they feel pain in their shoulder while you're doing the eye movements or the tapping. That's normal and it will reduce as you continue. But if the same person has also experienced a work incident where they broke their foot and they report feeling pain in their foot while you're doing the eye movements or the tapping, this means that they have connected this trauma with the incident from the past, and you should probably stop. And that's because this tells us the traumas are connected psychologically. Because this isn't therapy, they need to work on this in a therapeutic environment, so stop, no more eye movements or tapping, and discuss with the person what to do next to handle the situation. Refer them to a mental health professional to address the past trauma so that they can feel much better. We know that extended sets of eye movements can increase the possibility of past disturbing neural networks being activated. To minimize this possibility, we want them to be in short bursts. So the eye movements are 6 to 10 fast round trips. At the end of each set of eye movements or taps, if you're using taps, the person is immediately asked to refocus on the incident, and then the person is immediately asked to identify the level of disturbance, 0 to 10. So it's a left brain or a non-emotional exercise. This helps evoke the cognitive side to reduce the emotional response. So if any of the responses just discussed occurs, it might be an indication the brain is too sensitive to the current trauma, and therefore the eye movements should be immediately stopped. Step 7, desensitize it. Have them think of the incident. Then apply 6 to 8 round trips of eye movements. Tell them to take a breath and let it out, and think of the incident. Then ask them, how much does it bother you now, 0 to 10? No matter what they say, you say go with that. And then apply 6 to 10 more round trips of eye movements. You're going to repeat that process until the disturbance no longer drops. If they don't like the eye movements or you don't want to use them, that's okay. Use tapping or have them run in place for 5 seconds and then report their level of disturbance. When the disturbance stops, talk to them about what to do next. We refer to tapping and eye movements as bilateral stimulation or distracting activities stimulation. It can be done, again, with the eye movements or the tapping, running in place, moving their feet up and down really fast. All of those activities are good to help distract the mind so that they can remove the disturbance or reduce the disturbance to a level that they can tolerate it. You can use the tapping on the collarbones, on the shoulders, the forearms, the knees, and it's really helpful for the helper to lead it. So any of those things, and really if you can think about a way to do that differently, it's okay too.
Bring our hand forward to a comfortable distance from the individual and then sweep across the hand. Arm angle forward, a rapid sweep across the front of their face, a short burst of 5 seconds, and then stop. When using CID in a virtual environment, you have options just as you do face-to-face. One of which can be eye movements, and if you can see my elbow is on the desk, I can just sweep my hands. However, this particular sweep, it's going out of the range of the camera, so I might have to move over and position myself more to the left so I can get some feedback, at least in watching my own hand in my screen, to see how the eye movements are going. Alternatives to that can be more around the distracting activity stimulation, the DAS, as I refer to it. And those can involve collarbone tapping. It can involve elbow or forearm or bicep tapping, elbow tapping. It could be also just move your hands up and down like this. Those all are creating distracting activity stimulation, and therefore those would equally be valuable. I prefer those in a virtual environment, especially because I want to keep the client very actively involved, and particularly in the crisis settings, I want them to be active. It also is breaking that fight, flight, freeze response that is from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic system if you follow polyvagal theory. So there's options to utilize for virtual environments. They can also be done face-to-face if you want. Running in place, jumping up and down, singing, patty caking, all of those activities in a crisis setting, depending upon the setting and the person you're working with, create the distracted activity stimulation.
Step 8, close it. This is where you do just a little bit of debriefing over how the experience was for the person that you're working with and discuss with them what they want to do next. On the next slide, you'll see a video where the CID is done with a volunteer who was anxious about volunteering. The demonstration is meant only for you to see the procedure and not to mimic the use in a true crisis situation, but everything is the same for how you would do it. Although this person was anxious at the time, you'll be able to see her body language and watch her relax as they go through this procedure.
Are you anxious about doing this?
Little.
A little?
Little. So that was interesting that came
Oh, okay.
as we were doing it.
Before we do that, come over here for a minute. Actually, you can stand right there. So right now, stand sideways. Other way.
The other side?
How anxious are you right now about just doing this, 0 to 10?
0 to 10. Okay.
Yeah.
About 4.
About a 4. Comfortable with eye movements? Oh, I'm going to do it for you. Okay, move over just a little bit that way. So think about just being here, that is about a 4, and just follow my fingers. Take a breath. Now, how much is the body of 0 to 10?
About a 2.
Okay. Okay. Now, how much is the body of 0 to 10?
1.
Okay. Breath. Now, how much is the body of 0 to 10?
0.
Okay. Good. Thank you. So that's critical incident desensitization. It's a real quick crisis intervention.
Virtual work. In this time of uncertainty, many of our services are being provided virtually. We're either unable to go to our clients' homes or they're not able to get to the office under different circumstances. The CID can also be done in a virtual environment, just as the CISD. During this section, you'll see how well it works to do things virtually. Some things to think about: your relationship with the client. Do you know them outside of virtual reality or not? If not, make sure you have some attunement and an understanding of the present concern. Help them know that you're with them in this experience and that you'll get through it together. Make sure they're in a safe environment to work with you. Confidential surroundings is appropriate and a way to tell you that they're no longer comfortable speaking about the topic. Sort of a stop signal in case someone comes in or they want to change the subject. If you're using the phone, you can verbally walk through either of the procedures in this presentation. You can also use a video conferencing setup depending upon the policies of your employment and the client's comfortability. The 4 corners of safety. Just as we talked about previously, connection with your client is very important, helping them to know that you're with them in this process and that you'll help them through it. Have them look around their environment and talk about how safe it feels. Ask them what makes it safe for them to be there and do this work there. Bringing this to their attention intentionally can help with the relaxation and the ability to move forward in the work. Attunement. You have a good understanding of how they feel and what the problem is. And then you can work on the desensitization. The major components for this protocol to work for you is to identify the incident, give it a number, do the distracting attention stimulus, get a number, and repeat until the number goes down, then debrief. It's very simple, although the instructions can seem complicated. The distracting attention stimulus is the change agent here for reducing emotional response in the moment. We'll talk about another way to do that in a little bit with some scribbling. First, we're going to see a video, and in that video, you'll see another example of how to use the CID or the SID in a virtual environment. It was an unplanned situation and sort of impromptu, but you can see the procedures. And although the situation was anxiety-provoking for the client, it wasn't a situation where the client had a big traumatic incident. This is just to show you the procedures so that you can get them down and follow them.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being willing to do this. And actually, what I would like to do is I also have a critical incident processing experience, CIDP. I refer to it, critical incident desensitization protocols. And I want to be offering a virtual kind of intervention there as well. So if you don't mind doing that first, and then we can go into a more expanded thing after that. And I'll just kind of walk you through those since this is kind of totally new for you. And this could be with somebody in crisis. So the basic thing to start is there anything right now, or what is right now disturbing you?
Just worrying about the internet. My husband's doing conference calls downstairs and we're both working from home, and I think the whole neighborhood is too. And so just, awareness of, the pressure of not having control over external things like the internet.
Okay. And how much does that bother you right now, 0 to 10?
A 7. My palms are sweaty. I feel a little short of breath.
Okay. So what we know about dual attention, either bilateral tapping, eye movements, though I haven't used eye movements over the internet, seem to lower the level of disturbance. And if you're willing to try that,
Sure.
Okay, so what I'll do, just to explain to you, you can just be kind of tapping, and we'll do about 5 seconds of rapid tapping. And when I stop, I'm just going to ask you to rate the number of disturbance it is. And we'll see what it does, and maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. So with that, just kind of bring up this anxiety about the internet, and it's a 7 right now, and just go ahead and do a rapid set of stimulation. Okay. Now, when you take a breath, now how disturbing is it to you? 0 to 10.
Like a 4.
Okay, start with that. Okay. Now, your breath, and how disturbing is it to you now?
It's not.
Okay, very good. Okay, that is basically critical incident desensitization. We just bring up an incident, and this could be with somebody like we don't know each other yet, and that's in a way that was purposeful for me to set that up as a way of just kind of lowering the level of disturbance.
If you're in a place where you can use paper and pencil, markers, and crayons, you can use this method to desensitize a critical incident as well. You can use this online, you can use it over the phone or in person. You will need some paper, and you can use big paper, small paper, you can use paper that you can fold, or just several sheets. The CID, scribble it out. You're going to need some paper and some drawing utensils. You can use crayons or markers or colored pencils or pens or anything you really want. So we divide that piece of paper into 4 quadrants, and usually we do that by folding it in half and then folding it in half again. So we end up with 4 squares. In the upper left quadrant, we draw the incident, the worst part of it. So I have them draw the worst part of the incident, and now you can get a number on disturbance here or not. I like to use the number, so I'll ask them 0 to 10, how disturbing is it for you? And I have them put that in the corner. And then I have them take usually a black crayon and scribble it out, just as scribble as you can get it until you can't see it anymore. When they're done with that, I have them redraw the incident, the worst part of it, in the next quadrant. And I ask them to put a number, 0 to 10, how disturbing is it to you now? Scribble it out just as scribble as you can get it until you can't see it anymore. And then we keep doing that until the paper is full. We can flip it over, we can do another sheet of paper. As long as that number comes down, we want to continue. Or you can stop after a few times. The desensitization piece is looking at the drawing and scribbling it out until they can't see it. It's very helpful in helping to calm the system after an incident. You can continue this exercise to bring the client to a more positive place after the disturbances have come down as well. You can use another box or sheets of paper and draw anything positive that they've learned about themselves. So you have them look at the drawing and say a positive affirmation like, I handled it, I did the best I could, or I survived, something like that. Then we would have them tap slowly while they think about the positive and look at the positive picture. Note, slow tapping is different than when desensitizing a critical incident. The slow tapping sort of sets in the positive after the fast tapping or eye movements have desensitized the incident. You can also use slow tapping of the feet while they look at the positive and say the positive words. Another thing you can do just past that is have them draw a future event that's connected to the incident. So an example of that might be having to call the insurance agent to deal with filing a claim, and they may have been anxious about that. So they can draw a picture of that future event with them calling the insurance agent with a positive outcome and have a positive statement like, I can do that. While they look at that picture and tap their feet slowly or tap their arms, the purpose is for them to see them dealing with the situation in the future in a positive way. We only use tapping for positives, never eye movements. And positives are always slow, while desensitization or bringing down the negative is always fast.
Greetings. Today we're going to talk about scribbling it out. And this is an adopted drawing method from Nacho and Lucinia, who had done this, I think, down in Acapulco years ago, perhaps 1998, thereabouts, where they used drawings to help process. And these are variations of it. And there's been a lot of discussion about how to treat clients virtually, and when clients can't perhaps do standard processing, where you want to really keep things fragmented and very restricted, then these exercises will be very valuable for drawings. And these can be done with adults and or children. So scribbling out is a modification of those exercises. Okay, so let's use the drawing version to begin. There's 3 different versions. There's going to be the drawing version, there's going to be a word or a belief focus version, and there's going to be using just colored crayons as the 3rd version. So the drawing version, the variation that we're going to use now of scribbling out is going to be drawing. So take a piece of paper and fold it twice. I like to just use 4 quadrants. I can very quickly and easily fold this a couple times. And you'll see that once it's folded, it turns into a very nice piece of paper with essentially 8 quadrants, 4 in the front and 4 in the back. So the direction would be to have the person write down or draw what is going to be most frustrating for them in the first quadrant. So for me, I have this. And what I'm drawing here are I feel like I have too many plates spinning right now at once. And I'm feeling overwhelmed with how I have to look at every place. So if I'm using this as a very structured way, then I'm just going to think about looking at that picture, and I might even draw on the side how overwhelmed I'm feeling from 10 to 0. And I'm going to mark myself right now at about an 8 because I have a lot of things going on. Okay, now with that in mind, the next step is to scribble it out. So I'm just going to do whatever I do. And by the way, it doesn't matter how you do this. This is about dual attention and focus more so than anything else. So I'm just going to take care of that. Okay. Now when I look at the thought of all the work I have to do, all the different topics I have, in the next quadrant, I'm going to say, what's changed? Well, let's see. Number one, I guess maybe I am a little more neutral, and maybe I can see that there are compartments that I can put things in, and that I can label them and prioritize these spinning plates that I have, so to speak, and I can compartmentalize them into a priority. So with doing that, I have a little bit more control. So if I now measure that, I'm about a 5. Okay, so scribble that out again. And you can see the person doing this can get rather involved probably. Okay, now as I look at this thought about all these plates that we're spinning, and now I thought about how I start to compartmentalize, I'm beginning to see perhaps that there's a little bit of a structure, and that I can start to organize them a little bit differently. And I'm over here, and I have a little bit more control of the situations, and I can kind of direct my attention to them in order. I can start to organize my thoughts. And now when I draw that, I feel like I'm probably about a 3, okay? Okay. Now when I think about the tasks I have and how I've organized them, I can also see which ones are bigger, which ones maybe I can put off to the side and just wait for a while. Don't have to do them all at once. And so now as I draw myself, I'm beginning to feel a little bit more controlled. I can direct my attention to where I want to go, and I might reprioritize them. And these other ones can wait. I'll put those in my in Creator. My in Creator is my container where I put things to create, but I don't have to deal with them right now. So actually, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And so I think this is where I'm seeing that I'm controlling what I can. And so I'm going to switch gears. And as I look at this, it doesn't feel disturbing to me so much as maybe I'll even write in a thought. And what I'm writing in is I can handle it. And I'm going to have a little bit of a diagram here where 1 and 7, so now I'm using the VOC scale you might be able to see. And I'm right now at about a 5, and so I think I'm going to tap that in, and I like to just use very slow tapping as I look at the picture. Okay, I'm going to draw one more picture with this. So I'm going to really emphasize I can handle it. And now I have my boxes, which actually came up is artwork doesn't count, but what just came to me is I now have my ducks in a row. Okay, and I'm kind of smiling at that. Okay, so I can kind of put in, I should probably have the boxes there. Okay. So I'm going to tap that in. And I use slow tapping to let it sink in. So there is the drawing variation, and what we did was draw the event, and I drew feeling totally overwhelmed. My image was lots of plates spinning around, things being out of control. And I measured how that was, and then I scribbled it out. And then after I kind of put all that energy in, I moved to the second quadrant, and I drew what was there next. And also I was measuring at 0 to 10 on that little thermometer scale. And then after the third one, I really started to shift over into a positive thought. So now I can take advantage of that, looking at it and tapping that in. So that's the drawing variation. All right, what about a belief variation? What do I mean by that? So I'm going to start again. I'm going to use the 4 quadrants yet again, folding them up. And now I have to think of a second thing to work on here, since I've kind of calmed myself down about organizing. Maybe I can look at one of those projects. Okay, I'm going to look at one of those projects. And now what goes with me is the negative thought. Okay. So much to do, so little time. And right now, that statement feels like it's about a 7. Okay. So I'm going to think about that, and I'm also going to look like, oh my gosh, my hands up in my face here. Oh my, so much to do, so little time. Okay, we could do tapping, but we're going to follow with the scribbling out. So I'm going to scribble this out. And again, it doesn't matter how I do it. I'm not paying that much attention to it, but I want to just kind of let go of that. What it does seem to do here is oh, there it goes. It kind of wears it out. I got a little distracted. So much to do here. Okay. All right. Okay, now I can compartmentalize. So I'm thinking about my ducks. My ducks in a row. I can kind of, that one duck I can compartmentalize into what I need to do. Oh, and it came up with 1 step at a time. So when I think about the projects I have, it's really not about a 3, I think now. Okay, so let's get another pen. But I have lots of pens on the side. Okay, and I'm gonna, again, scribble this out. And once again, doesn't matter how it's done, but we're just getting rid of that thought. Okay. And what comes to my mind is baby steps. And what's the sentence you say? 1 inch at a time. Okay. There's a saying there. I can't remember what it is. Okay, and actually, I'm feeling pretty good about that. So if I just take baby steps, and doing 1 inch at a time is a cinch, I think, is something like that. That feels pretty positive. So yet again, I'm just going to look at that, take baby steps, and see that if I just kind of stay focused on 1 step at a time and just stay compartmentalized, I'm allowing myself to pull in resources that comes up, and actually to share with you. I'm remembering going through Officer Kennedy School in the Marine Corps and on these forced marches where I just stared down at my feet and took one step at a time, not knowing, and just one. I couldn't do two, but I could do one, and that's coming online. So I'm going to strengthen that as a skill set that I had, and so this is a resource I can take advantage of. Some of my training in other places, I can do this one step at a time. Okay. And I think it's strengthen one more thing is stay ahead. Okay. Okay. It's interesting how these channels of association come up. It's occurred to me I need to stay ahead and I have to keep my scan going. And those are terms that I used when I was flying, where you have to stay ahead of the aircraft and I have to keep my scan going on all the instruments. So I just have to stay one step ahead, anticipate what's coming up, keeping my scan going in these steps so I can strengthen that. Okay, so that's the second version, which is where I have language now. And you could see that the language changed. I can't even remember what I put down the first time, but I can see now that I can take baby steps and I can kind of circle that. And show you one other thing I want to do here. I can start to use figure eights and I can transition between these two thoughts. Just occurred to me. I can weave these two together. Yes, I can take baby steps, one step at a time, thinking about the long-range plans, keep my scan going. So that feels good. Second version. All right, now what about the third version? Well, this can be done with somebody who doesn't want to talk a lot about the things. This can be done with the children. This can be done with somebody who doesn't want to disclose information. Once again, starting off, I'm gonna do my 4 quadrants. It's what I prefer to do. And now I'm going to think about another event, and I'm going to bring in some crayons. Okay, and so as I look at the crayons, first off, I have to think about what is the event that I want to work on. Let me see. I'm kind of clearing myself out here. So, okay, I have an event. I have an event, and I'm going to just pick the color that represents that event. Okay. Now, as I look at the other colors I have here, I think what will be helpful for me with this particular event that I've colored in is a dark green for now. So I'm going to start to use the dark green, and it's going to start to show off this way, and then I'm going to expand how I can break through that. That was actually a wall, a barrier that I drew. And so now I'm going to take that and I'm going to get through it. I'm going to break through. I'm going to break through. Okay. So now, as I look at this event, yellow seems to come out. And you may not be able to see the yellow. It's still like a line, but it has spaces in it. It wasn't a solid line, it's a dash line now. Okay, and I'm going to pick a slightly different, lighter color green than it was before. And I'm going to see that I can get through this. I can get through these situations, and I can I can surround them, I can be on the other side, and I can manage that, and I can keep building it up, and I can get through that in that way. And as I get through that, the opening gets larger and larger and larger, to where, again, I can see myself getting through what I perceive as a barrier, challenge. I'm putting language to this as I draw. Okay, so now, what do I want to do? Well, with the crayons I have here, I don't think any of them resonate. So maybe I can use, this as a blue, and I'm just drawing. Okay. So now I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel. I'm seeing positives for the work I've done, and actually I can see that there's a little bit up here that I will have done. And that's a positive shift again. So I'm going to tap that in. And what I have the need to do is, way down here is that, was that barrier. It's in the background, but it's mountable. And I can look at it. It might get a little more solid. Yep. And the prize at the end has gotten to be more solid. Okay. Okay, so there you had a chance to see the third. So we had 3 variations that we did. The first of which was drawing. Just draw the event out. You saw how we did that. And then scribbled it out. And then draw it again. And this is really the kind of a crisis intervention where you focus on event and then you measure it. You focus on it and measure it. And you could see with each of the drawings, I had that little scale on the side. And the level of disturbance, the SUD, went down. And then with each drawing it out. And this is especially helpful with something that's really scary. And so you want to eradicate that. And like people are afraid of the viruses right now, since we're recording this during the COVID-19 issues. And so doing this virtually, they might be concerned about that. So that was the first exercise. That was our drawing it through until we got to something positive, and then we strengthened that. That was the first exercise. Can't see much left of the beliefs, but I started off with the belief that I had, and I don't even remember what it is, and scribbled that out, and then now thought of the issue and write down the belief again, what it was. And then it evolved into taking baby steps and staying ahead of keep my scan going so I can stay ahead of the situation. And once I got to that positive side, again, tapped it in. And then the third one we just did was using crayons, colors, to represent whatever the issue is. And if you have a better selection of colors than crayons than I had right here, then there's a lot more variety. Each time offering them to say, now as you think about the incident, what crayon represents the disturbing aspects of it, and what crayon now represents the more adaptive. So you're kind of having a goal. So you are going to have a kind of a pre and post. What are you stuck with, and what color represents the adaptive piece? So this is a little bit more of an expansion that you really are beginning to put in thoughts. Okay. That's the coloring variation. Okay, and the questions have been asked is, how's this work self-use? Well, you just saw that I'm using this on my own, and therefore I think it works fine, particularly with clients who are very activated. They need to have something to do. This is very concrete. It keeps them moving, so you really are breaking that fight, flight, freeze that could be sometimes really overwhelming to somebody. It gives them a way to do this, and so I think that this could be something you could have them do in between treatment sessions. They could come back and talk about it, depending upon what's left with the scribbling out. There's not a whole lot left, but you could say, what were you talking about? And if they're able to remember it, that's great. So this gives you an example of the scribbling out and some variations, all of which came from Lucinia and Nacho, and into the EMDR community as a way to process. This could also be done in a group. Get a group together and everybody could draw their meaning for, let's say, being homebound, or they're in a particular domestic violence group, or they're in an addictions group. It could be done that way, and everybody could then create their own. And then you could also create a group share about what that thought was. So there's lots of ways you can implement that. So I hope this little short video will be helpful for you.
The CID was developed by Roy Kiesling, LISW, who has a long history of work in response to disasters. Roy began using these crisis intervention tools with clinicians and non-clinicians to help bring healing to situations that were very overwhelming. As you can see here, we have taught these procedures, along with a few others, to non-mental health professionals and community members who are dealing with humans in crisis every day. Mr. Kiesling has kindly given his permission to use these materials in this presentation, of which I am very grateful. CID is an acute crisis intervention. It is not psychotherapy. Although it uses eye movements, it is not EMDR, which is a psychotherapy. CID's desensitization protocols were derived from some of early EMDR's procedures and Gary Quinn's ERP. CID is designed as a crisis intervention and is not intended to replace counseling or psychotherapy received from a licensed mental health professional. CID protocols should only be administered by those having received the training course. CID is considered experimental and currently lacks systemic empirical research. Here are many different research studies that are done that support the use of eye movements with acute stress. Here is a list of references I have used in the preparation of this presentation. We have gone over what a crisis is, the stress response, and how to help those deal in a cognitive way with critical incidents through talking. We have also gone over how to help them deal with critical incidents with a focus on emotional de-escalation. I hope you feel better prepared to assist those in a crisis situation. Thank you for listening to this presentation of crisis interventions.